This is May Golan, Minister of Social Equity and Women's Advancement. You may have heard.
I bet she's going to have something good to say.
Yes. Pink bombs for everybody. Pinkwashing is like a tried and true tactic of the Israeli government to dehumanize the Palestinian people in the same way that the Bush administration and neocons and some Democrats justified our invasion and continued occupation of Afghanistan by saying it was for women's rights because of the Taliban. That same playbook is used when speaking about Gaza, even though it's even more of a farce, in my opinion, because of the rate of killing of majority women and children, 30,000 Palestinians at this point. And then also just like the conditions on the ground of, you hear the women literally with C-sections that are 3 hours fresh being forced to run and flee hospitals as the IDF bombards. And also because of the conditions that we all know, that like it's not as if Gaza or Palestinians are their own nation. Gaza is a camp in which Palestinians are concentrated and they're unable to leave, control their own water, electricity, what have you. So that's not the same, but it's a way to just basically say, Israel's like you, Israel's like the West. We like gay people. We don't allow gay marriage, but only if you want to be a Western person to increase our population. You can come over, and if you're gay, you can live here, but we won't legalize it for people that are already here. It's not a progressive society. You can't be a progressive settler colonial state in the way Israel is. However, it's a huge plank of their propaganda effort in order to win over the hearts and minds of the West. So this is what May Golan serves in terms of like the propaganda function within the Israeli government. And this is her speaking at the hearing on expelling this brave Knesset member, Ofer Kasif, a left-wing member who narrowly escaped an expulsion because he supports South Africa's genocide case against Israel. And this is her speaking about Israel's conduct, and it's clarifying.
Yep.
So now listen up, Mr. Fifth Column, Mr. Kakfi. Yeah, can we go a little slower? Wait, is that at real-time speed? Okay, it's okay. Start over. I just wasn't prepared. I just wasn't prepared to. I thought she was speaking in English. I don't know why I thought that. So she starts off here. So now listen up, Mr. Fifth Column, and then we'll keep going. Mr. Kasif, neither you nor your partners who are defending you from home and abroad matter to us even one bit. This government doesn't stutter about you. You can keep dreaming that we will end the war without victory. We are not ashamed to say that we want to see the soldiers of the IDF, the holy heroes of ours, catching Sinwar and his terrorists by their ears and dragging them all across the Gaza Strip on their way to the dungeons of the prison authority. But all right, pause and go back a little. Sorry. No, it's okay. Slow it down. Yeah, I guess.
For those listening to the podcast version, Emma's Hebrew is a little rusty, so she's trying to catch up with what she's saying when she translates.
Exactly. Thank you.
I think you're doing a great job. You're really catching all those distinct words.
Yep. Okay. All right. On their way to the dungeons of the prison authority, she says, but Ben-Gvir's prison authority, not of Bar-Lev or Mikali, or in the best case scenario, to a coffin. I am personally proud of the ruins of Gaza, and that every baby, even 80 years from now, will tell their grandchildren what the Jews did when their families were murdered and raped and their civilians were kidnapped. And you and your friends can dream that we will allow you to build a government. Because if you think that the price of the slaughter... Gosh, that was really fast. This captions... No, it's not your fault. Just pause it there.
Yeah,
okay.
It just skips right over.
I'm just trying to do this for the podcast audience, but it's causing an issue. Go back. And raped and their civilians were kidnapped. You and your friends can dream that we will allow you to build a government. Because if you think That the prize of the slaughter of Jews, blah, 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 the kidnapping of civilians. Okay, will be to
she's
sit
proud of the rubble. Yeah, we got it.
in the government of change. You are dreaming. You can keep shouting, peace now and elections now. From Kaplan to Gaza, let them hear you. We have a mission. I am concluding.
And sorry, yeah, I mean we got the point.
Yeah.
This is not anything different than Zionists have been saying for 75 years,
yeah.
And it's the media and people like Nancy Pelosi that we have to thank for the fact that everyone has to come to this realization late, as 30,000 plus people have been slaughtered.
I mean, I am personally proud of the ruins of Gaza. And then she says the mythology of everyone will know the grandness of what we've done. This is Nazis without the anti-Semitism, even though they're pretty anti-Semitic to anti-Zionist Jews.
It's fascists.
Nazi, fascist, Nazis.
I mean, there's no way you give a speech like this and you see this video and you think you're going to end up looking good. I mean, obviously, people who are, paying attention realize right now how bad she looks here. But going forward, it's obviously only going to continue. Like again, saying I always sort of stop myself when saying this, because obviously this does nothing to help people who are currently dying in Gaza right now. But if you are gonna, if you are looking for a positive sign throughout this over these past few months, it's that the tide has changed tremendously in terms of what the general public thinks about what's going on in Palestine and in Israel. And there's no way that if it already isn't happening, that this is going to look good in a few years from her. This is all proof of just the horrendous sort of people that are running Israel. It's proof of how proud they are of what they're doing in Gaza. They're proud of this. And again, this rhetoric is, like Emma said, straight up fascist. It's fascism. There's no other way to look at what's being said here.
All right. Well,
sorry, I'll just say I appreciate the honesty. If it's the energy of I am proud of Gaza, yeah, I repeat, I hope we see the end of Israel before we all pass from this earth. I hope that project is concluded, because no one believes that it's possible anymore, because of, I think we can hamstring support here in the West. Like that should be it's a huge goal, but it's one to, I think energize a life. I hope it's over.
But this is also why I think there's such a gulf between what I was talking about with like Nancy Pelosi being kind of duped by all of these things, in that how the media portrays mainstream media portrays what's going on in Israel and Gaza, how the language is used to be like, they're offensive, they're moving this way and that, when it's like, every official who's greenlighting all of this is talking about this in biblical matters and about how they're going to bounce the rubble and make it a parking lot. Oh, wait, that's our American officials talking about it that way. Members of Congress talking about it that way, as well as members of the Knesset, like members of Netanyahu's war cabinet, like Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, who literally blocked flour shipments. They're not letting flour into Gaza by administrative fiat. And the soldiers on their Telegram, the IDF soldiers on their Telegram channels, are literally stealing toys and food and tables and furniture and breaking windows and saying "send me to The Hague" mockingly, and then sending it to their friends. There's we are just in a constant cycle in the United States of being lied to and lying to others about what's going on.
I mean, the constant referencing, even in like these sorts of speeches we've seen over and over again of children, and even like the absolutely bizarre, like to anyone with a sane brain, of what at what age does a child become responsible for walking around maybe in military fatigues, and at what age do we consider them to be open for attack? Is insanity. And the good guys, quote unquote, I mean, that's just ridiculous framing anyway, but that's how the US loves to frame this sort of stuff. But the good guys don't look at children of any age and question at what point do we? At what age are we allowed to? Is 8-year-olds okay for? Is it open season on 8-year-olds, or we gotta wait till they're 10? It's 15 okay. 15 is a teenager. They gotta be okay, right? It's insanity to talk about kids of any age that way. I'm sorry, it just is. And if you're on the right side of history, you're not trying to finagle with your, with the intellectuals about at what age is it okay to shoot somebody.
Yeah. Some news. Jerry Nadler, Dan Goldman, Jamie Raskin, and Jewish colleagues urge Biden administration to facilitate a temporary ceasefire. I'll just say, as John Ben Menachem said, Dan Goldman smeared Uline New as anti-Semitic with AIPAC mailers. All these guys, Zionist apologists, calling for a temporary ceasefire. Now, that's not good enough. It's not good enough to call for a temporary ceasefire and then have this stuff about, but we got to make sure the hostages. No, ceasefire was always the hostage route. That was always the route.
How did all the hostages except for 2 get released? Except for 2.
What happened with those 2?
And so, like, when Nadler, anybody who wants a pat on the back from Nadler, Goldman, Raskin, you're still doing Zionist propaganda with that bullshit. Like, this idea that a ceasefire is at all contrary and not actually the route to secure safety of the hostages is Zionist propaganda that actually supports the bombing campaign. So miss me with that shit.
Exactly. I also wanted to just quick anecdote. I had drinks with some friends last night, and one of them says they know somebody who just was in Israel last week for a 300-person wedding, and that they were asking people, how things were. They were IDF soldiers who had come from Gaza that day, killing Palestinians, and then came to celebrate the wedding that night.
Feel safe. Letting terrorists in.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think, a lot of that propaganda is insular that we're hearing from we are the unintended audience of a lot of Israeli official propaganda and a lot of the IDF soldiers' TikTok videos. That's meant for people in Israel. And a lot of our politicians, seemingly wanted to wait until they could determine for a fact that this was going to hurt their political chances in the upcoming election, and whether or not the Israeli propaganda machine was seemingly going to be able to actually get control of the narrative. But, I think as we've seen people like, God, I was going to call him Shrek, but that's not his name. Fetterman. My thing is like Shrek. Fetterman complain, just the availability of alternative narratives about what's going on in Gaza, like actual, not just journalists on the ground, but people who live there, has been enough to sway a lot more Democrats, at least, towards having, a worse opinion about Israel's role in perpetuating an apartheid state before October 7th and just like a genocide after. So, I think a lot of our politicians are just upset that the Israeli politicians and Israeli media can't seem to get their own, actors on like a more even tempered tone. Like if they were still doing the same bombing campaign, but you didn't have like seemingly every member of the Knesset, every cabinet minister from like defense down to like agriculture going like, we got to raise all of Gaza, then the Democrats could at least pretend like things were more complicated, things were a little bit less, black and white, appeal to some liberal ideas about like Western feminism and how we have to save brown women from brown men, and maybe also Jewish women coded as white from brown men, and that would have been fine. But every time you hear it from Netanyahu, like they're engaging in a holy war against not just like Hamas, and not just Gazans, but in their own words, like children under the age, above the age of 6.
Smite them all.
Yeah, they're smiting everything from children to ass. It's crazy.